Today with Jane Haskell, and she's going to share both her studio and her home. She was part of the Masters series, and she's been a part of just about everything that goes on in Pittsburgh in the art world. So let's
Thank
get
you for
started.
that, Dr.
Well,
Nellie. That's really nice.
Let's take a look at what's behind us, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, this is an ongoing project. I've done a series so far of 2 paintings that are complete and these 2 that I'm working on. I spend my summers on Martha's Vineyard, and I have photographed the Up Island beaches on Martha's Vineyard, which are most unusual because they have cliffs and they have rocks and they have rocks that were part of the glacial deposits when the glacier receded from the island. And on the wall are the photographs that I've taken. And I'm working from those photographs. And each year those beaches change. And I've photographed them in successive years and have probably hundreds of photographs. And so far I've selected 4 to work from and enlarge on canvas. It's an ongoing project, going on for the rest of my life, and it takes place in between working on other projects, such as my work in light that I sometimes am commissioned for, but when I'm not working on commission, I try to work in the studio and do my painting.
There's one over in the entrance here
Yes.
that you showed us, and I'd like Donna to get a shot of that because
Taken in the year 2000, and the other cliff photograph, which is incomplete, was taken in 2001. I don't have it from 2002, but I'll go back again next year, all things being equal, and try to do it again. And this painting, that painting is from Lucy Vincent Beach. This one is from Squidnocket Beach, and it's a huge rock from the glacial deposit. And this was done in 2000, photographed in 2000, and I painted it the following winter. And then when I went back the following year, the rock had been overturned, and it no longer had this wonderful character with the split in it that I photographed the year before. And so it's an ever-evolving and ever-changing scene and ever-changing project.
nature and you.
Well, good way to put it.
Do you always use photographs to work from?
No, I don't. The other painting behind you on the wall is one of a series that I did around 10 or 11 years ago. It was called my Window Series, and I showed, I would say, at least a dozen or more of those at the Concept Gallery in 1991. And I think I may have shown some of them in New York at AI Art Gallery. I can't quite remember what I showed there. But at any rate, these were also shown at the JCC in a retrospective exhibition of several decades of my work a couple of years ago. I keep my paints and brushes that I'm not using at the moment here, all kinds of equipment, staple guns, copper wire for the neon work, cutting tools, a drill, acrylics on this shelf, oils, which are now out on the table, usually reside on this shelf. Just a conglomeration of everything. And when I moved into this apartment, it was just wonderful to have these open shelves where I could stack things.
And see things.
Yeah. And then there are 2 cabinets on the window wall, which are wonderful storage space for
Let's show them.
the
Now you do all your own photography and developing?
I do now. I did not before.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of work that was photographed either professionally of my work or a lot of photographs of trips that I've taken around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I have many slide drums filled with that kind of material.
Right.
And that.
You spoke
This
of
is a
neon.
palette. Pardon me?
You spoke of neon.
Yes. This is a palette, and this is the way that neon can be transported safely because the chicken wire is somewhat flexible. And it's tied to the chicken wire. The neon tubes are tied to the chicken wire with copper wire, and I have coils of copper wire in my storage unit there. I have a hanging device overhead, which you'll see, hanging from my ceiling right here on
That's
these tracks.
wonderful.
Yeah. It's very handy. The ceiling is high enough so that it works for me. And then I turn those up on the table. And any other curves or I usually use fairly simple forms, but they can bend almost any shape. I did a project at the University of Pittsburgh for their bicentennial, and it's in the student union. Robert and Tom did that for me, and they did the panther, and that was much more difficult bending of the neon than anything that in my abstract designs.
I assume they're using heat to bend?
Oh yes.
Okay.
They have a
Do
burner.
Okay.
It's almost like you would use in a chemistry lab,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got two gas flames, and they put the glass in between and bend it, and it takes a great deal of skill because if you get the glass too hot, it will melt, and if you don't get it hot enough, you can't bend it to the right shape.
Right.
And so it's a very tricky business, which I never learned to do. I'm very grateful to have good fabricators to work for me.
That's right.
Another fabricator is Jim Fidesz in McKeesport, and I've used him for several projects.
How do they get the rods? Why?
They buy 4-foot sticks of glass. Usually you try not to make a segment that's more than 7 feet because the glass has to be coordinated with the transformer that it's hooked up to, and it has to be calibrated with that transformer. The glass can be pumped with either neon or argon and mercury. Argon and mercury is for cool colors, neon is for warm colors. There are other gases that can be used, but those are the two most powerful gases. In addition, the color can be changed by using colored glass. Cobalt blue, ruby red are the two most beautiful colors of all, and there's a gold colored glass. Or the tube of glass can be coated with a powder, a phosphorescent powder, that when the tube is pumped out so that there are no impurities and no air in the tube, after the shape is made, one of the electrodes is put on one end and sealed, and the tube is sealed off. The other end, they blow out all the impurities under very, very high-powered electricity. Very dangerous. And then the other electrode is sealed onto the glass. And when it's hooked up to the transformer and electrical power, the color is determined by the powder in the glass or the color of the glass itself, and also the kind of gas that's being pumped into it. Also, the tubes vary in thickness from 8 millimeters to 15 millimeters in diameter. The most usual width is the 12 or 15 millimeter. The 8 is almost never used, it's very delicate, and the 10 is, and each, the depth of color is influenced by the diameter of the tube. The most intense color is the narrowest in diameter.
So you have to know all of this before you hand them what you want, because you have the color that you want.
I specify the color.
Okay.
And they calibrate it with the transformers and determine just how they're going to bend according to my pattern that's laid on the asbestos, and how long the tube is going to be, and how many tubes can be put on one transformer. And
So there's a lot to know.
There's a lot of technical knowledge and skill.
Now you have a couple of pieces over there that are leaning against the wall.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about one of your projects.
Yes, that was one of my failed projects.
Ah.
It wasn't really failed. I thought it was successful. There were 3 finalists for the Convention Center Commission for the second floor reception area, and I was chosen as one of the finalists, and worked
That's wonderful.
very hard on this proposal. And we'll go over and look at the boards, and I'll explain what my proposal consisted of. And Tom Anthony was going to fabricate the neon for me if I got the commission. So, shall we walk over there and see?
Sure.
Photographs of the convention center under construction, and came up with the concept of the Allegheny River flowing past the convention center, and this is a photograph at night of the Allegheny River with the colored lights from the opposite bank reflected in the water. And what I thought of was the moving current of the river portrayed in neon, which you would see hanging from the ceiling as you come up the escalator onto the second floor reception area. And in order to support the neon, I proposed this grid-like form that kind of floated and curved and mirrored the concept of the neon. And this was my original photograph of the river in daytime. I did a tracing. From the tracing, I analyzed it and created a pattern that translated into the neon tubes themselves. And this is a pattern of the grid forms with the neon. This is the location here of my ceiling installation above the escalator. And these are a series of really computer-generated photographs, not really photographs, of the work at different times of the day in the convention center.
Now you did an awful lot of work as a presentation.
Yes.
Who did you present these to?
I presented it to the jury for the convention center.
And do you always do this?
I've done it any number of times. I completed as I mentioned before, a commission for the Pittsburgh subway in 1985. I completed that. It's on the lower track level of the Steel Plaza station. Several years later, I received a commission to work in Boston at Logan Airport in the parking garage, and I did 4 neon installations in what were wonderful architectural areas where the stairwells were in the parking garage. They were kind of convoluted, bare bones concrete stairwells that were designed by, I think, a disciple of Louis Kahn. And I loved the building, and it was great inspiration because I decided that it really looked like a Romanesque cathedral, and that I would put so-called stained glass windows on the concrete walls of windows of neon. And I made abstract patterns, and that was a very successful job. And then I got another commission a few years later to work in the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood Airport, and I did a fiber optic commission for them in the baggage claim area of the Delta terminal, and I used images, silhouetted images of birds flying, fish.
Your work is, you work with neon, you work with paints, you work with photography, you work with computer. What gave you all that interest? Where does all that come from? Where did you study?
That's a hard question to answer. I've been working since I was a little girl. I can remember when I was 4 or 5 years old, sitting upstairs in my bedroom when my mother and father had a dinner party, and I was painting in oils at that time. Maybe I was a little older. I don't really remember. And I was chosen by my 4th or 5th grade teacher, art teacher, to attend her classes. Then I studied at Skidmore College, got my bachelor's degree in fine arts. And after World War II, I was married and had 3 daughters. I moved to Pittsburgh before the second daughter was born. I had grown up in New York. And after my 3rd daughter was born, Judy, I went back to Sam Rosenberg's workshop and spent about 10 years in his workshop painting. And he was a great inspiration here. I call him the Hans Hoffman of Pittsburgh. And then I decided I didn't know enough. So I went to the University of Pittsburgh and got a master's in art history. And after that, I taught art history for about 10 years at Duquesne University. And then I decided I wasn't doing any of my own work, and I was going back to the studio. I wasn't sure whether I could really sustain a full-time working in the studio at that point. But it was about 78 when I made this decision.
And do you work full-time in your studio?
I would say I work sporadically right now, but I did for a while. I did work very hard in the studio that I had in the uptown area of Pittsburgh, and I shared that studio with Lois Kaufman. And we worked together a great deal, and she was a painter, and she also did work in welded metals, found objects. And one day I was trying to solve a problem. I had worked in plexiglass, etching plexiglass, and using light to pick up the etched portion of the plexiglass. I couldn't solve my problem, and she said, "Why don't you try neon?" And I said, "Good idea." And that's when I started working neon. That was about 78 or 79. So I've been doing work in light ever since. I did some installations at Concept and at the AAP Gallery, and one other place, where did I do it? Oh, in the exhibition at the Pittsburgh Center for the Art, Pittsburgh, what was it called? I've forgotten the name of the exhibition, but I was invited. It was a curated show by Vicki Clark and Robert Raxka, and I did an installation in fluorescent lamps and I have a warehouse full of colored fluorescent lamps that I'm hoping to find a place to use at some point.
Right.
So I've done a commission in that and several installations. And light.
How did you find all the different, are you always using light? Is light always?
Well, it's always present. You know, it's present on the beaches of Martha's Vineyard. It's present in canvases. An artist is always working in light in some dimension. And photography certainly requires an emphasis on light.
Right.
And so I either use light as a specific medium in of itself, tangible medium, or I use it as a subtle force in my photographs and my painting.
Do you work on a number of projects at the same time? Do you have a couple of paintings going at the same time? Or do you usually direct all your energy to one?
When I'm working on a commission, I direct all my energies to that, and then the paintings wait. And when I'm not working on a commission, I try to work on my photographs and my paintings, and also my digital drawings on the computer, which I can generate from Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator and print on my Epson.
You are one of the most organized people, not just artists, but people. You know where your paints are and where your brushes are, and you can go right to them and get them. And I would imagine that that helps a lot.
Well, I try to be as organized as I can, although sometimes I feel that I'm terribly fragmented. I'm not sure where I am and what I'm doing. But I find that if everything is where I know it's at, then I can function a lot better.
Let's go into your other room next door, which is your office and has some of the equipment you're talking about.
And then I have a neon piece in the hallway that you
Great.
can look at, and
We'll
the
head
other pieces
towards
that are in my
the
other
living room, living area.
Oh.
That first painting is Samuel Rosenberg that Donna just showed you.
Pardon me?
I was telling the camera what they just saw. I wanted them to
Oh.
identify that as Samuel Rosenberg.
And this is Lois Kaufman's figure that I just brought back from the Associated Artists exhibition. Lois died in June, and she was one of the artists memorialized in our current AAP show. I think you can get a better shot of that from this side because it really looks like a couple, and you can see the faces here.
You have two computers here?
Yes, that's my old computer, and we do all the nitty-gritty work on that, and I use this for my artwork photographs. I just turn it on, so I don't know what you can get on the camera, but I can show you a couple of photographs I took in China.
It's a good idea. Let's go over there.
Okay, we'll be up in a minute or so. Not quite ready. Big item in Western China, and they make raisins. And this man was sitting in the market selling his baskets of grapes.
And you took this with a digital?
With a digital camera. Mm-hmm. And then I just download the images into the computer. And then I can save them on a CD-ROM. And as long as I inventory them, I know what I've got. Otherwise, I've got over 1,000 pictures now, and I don't have the whole thing inventoried entirely. I kind of know it by dates, because I can tell when I was on the vineyard in the summertime or when I was in China, and I mark the dates and the numbers down on my discs, and then I hope I can find the image that I want. A little bit hit and miss, but it's fun to work with them.
Let's see what else you have over here.
For just printing out letters and things like that. The top printer is my photo quality printer, and that's hooked up to the laptop over here.
They just do what they do.
Yeah, they do what they do. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to your residence.
Okay, good. Do you want to see any more images from here, or no? Let's see what else I can pull up here. No. Oh, this is the animal market. And that little boy is loafing around waiting for his family. I don't know how clear that is. This was a fascinating thing. All of the sheep and goats have been brought down in the fall to the animal market from the mountains where they grazed all summer and sold to farmers. And there are donkeys and there are horses, and it's so crowded. And it's quite remarkable. And Kashgar was the biggest market for all kinds of merchandise on the Silk Road between Western Europe, Central Asia, and China.
And this is where they came together?
Yes. This was the biggest market in Western China where everything met. It's right on the border of the Taklamakan Desert. And then there's the Gobi Desert. A lot of China is desert. And we traversed the Gobi Desert and picked up dinosaur bones at one site.
Wow.
Yeah. It was quite an interesting trip. It was an adventure. Difficult.
I'll bet.
Very demanding physically.
Yeah.
But it was well worth it. It was great. Okay.
We'll go this way.
Say that again, Jane.
I did that in the late 80s. And I think I showed this at AIR in New York. I had my shows there. And it's the last neon piece that I have here. I have another piece in New York, but all the rest have been sold, so
That's wonderful.
they're gone, and I haven't been able to make any more recently.
Do you keep slides?
Yes, I have slides of everything.
Everything that you ever made?
Well, you know,
Way back.
all my neon pieces are on slides. Most of my paintings are on slides. I started to keep slides of my work sometime in the late 60s.
I think it's interesting for people to know that you go through all of this process